So we'll begin the way that we normally do with about a half an hour sitting period. And then when you hear the sound of my voice, it won't be a bell. I'll just call you back into the room with the sound of my voice. Then you can open your eyes and we'll begin the discussion part of our evening. So find a position that feels comfortable enough for you to sit or recline, whatever you're choosing to do with your body right now. It can be nice to just ask the body what it needs for enough comfort to practice. You might be surprised at the answer. Just taking a couple of deep breaths together to settle into the posture. You might find this deep breathing to be soothing. And if you do, it's okay to just continue as long as you'd like. Just watching as the system settles. And when the time is right, just resting into the rhythm of the breathing happening naturally. And inviting the attention just to connect here with this movement of air in and out of the body. Accepting the breaths, the body, just as they are. You might feel something here accompanying the breath. Perhaps it has a felt sense in the body. Some quality in the heart. You might just offer a little whisper. It's okay to be here. Whatever this accompaniment is. Perhaps it feels pleasant, or perhaps not. As we connect with the experience of breathing, we also say yes to the flow of life, expressing itself right here in this moment, through this heart and this body. Emotions, thoughts, body sensations. Practicing intimacy with the way things are. Not needing to fabricate anything, demand the heart or the body to be any way. Just practicing saying yes to the way things are. And realizing that every experience, every emotion, every thought, every body sensation is a part of a flow, a coming and a going, a process, of nature, a process of nature that we're not in charge of. So there's no sense in rejecting anything. We can invite the heart to accept nature on nature's terms. breath, the body, each mind state. We are each just impersonal expressions of nature, of a flow that is life. You might actually observe how when the heart decides not to reject any experience, the only choice that makes sense is loving awareness. Yes, it's like this. I care about this life. It's just like this. When you're ready, you can open your eyes slowly, gently. Return your attention back to this room and all the other beings that are here with you. And if you'd like to take a minute to stretch your legs, move the body a bit, feel free to do that now. So before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that those of us who live in Minnesota live on Dakota land that's been stewarded by Indigenous people and communities for many, many years. Just appreciating all of that, your leadership and stewardship. And it also feels right just to invite in all of the ancestors, throughout our own personal lineages, but also through this Buddhist lineage that we're a part of, just to be here with us tonight. Our grandparents, wise beings. And those, just as well as we see each other on the screen, we can trust that their presence somehow lives on in us. To some extent, we are expressions of all the goodness and challenge that they have gone through in their lives, all the awareness and wisdom that's been cultivated, compassion. And we're moving that forward just by being here and connecting in this way, sharing the Dharma together. So I've been teaching out of a book called Listening to the Heart on Wednesday nights, a wonderful book by Thanissaro and Kittisaro. And it seemed appropriate to take a break from that and directly address the conditions in our lives, and specifically the killing of George Floyd. And finding some way to acknowledge the truth of the pain in our lives and in our hearts and in our communities. And as I was reflecting on what I might say, what I might offer, just with a deep intention to be supportive, to say something, anything that would be supportive of you as you grapple with what's moving in your heart and what you might do in response to that. And not just this one particular incident, but also the legacy of racial injustice in this country that has lived on since the inception of this country. What I kept coming back to is this reality that anything that I say will likely be unsatisfactory. And that's just the way it is. Because somehow words are always going to fall short. And it just points us to this reality that, the teachings are always pointers, but the work, the transformation of the heart, the responsibility really lies in each of us to do the work so that we're planting seeds, setting things in motion in our own lives and in the collective realities that we live in. The seeds of love and compassion and wisdom that will yield something different, that will grow into something different. And my ask is that as I share what I have to share with you, that you just practice just the way that we were in the meditation, but this time with your eyes open, with the awareness of being in community, and with keeping track of your body, what's happening and moving in your body, the sensations that are there, the felt sense that's there, what's moving in the heart, and not being afraid to acknowledge whatever arises for you, perhaps frustration or irritation or apathy even, and just to stay right there with that. Because again, there's nothing more important than that, than this moment, the one that is showing itself to each of us right now. So we can find a way, even in our listening, to just attend to what's happening here in this heart and mind, in this body. And so we're cultivating this habit of mindfulness all the time, which is actually what I want to speak to a little bit tonight. I've gone back and forth about what I wanted to talk about. Wanted to share something, something authentic about how I've been practicing and what teachings have been most useful to me as I've gone about my life in the last couple of days. And themes of compassion and equanimity and working with anger, and these all seemed relevant. But I found myself really wanting to go back to the basics. It's such a time of confusion, and we're social distancing, and yet we're being called to action. I've been tracking I'm in Michigan right now with my partner and her parents. And so I'm not in Minneapolis, but I've been tracking by way of talking to friends and community members and watching the news and videos that people send me. And so been aware of kind of what's happening. And it can feel so strange to be here in, the time of coronavirus and social distancing, yet with this strong desire of the heart to be of service, to be of use, to contribute something that might benefit our collective well-being. And what I keep coming back to is like, oh, well, what is the starting place, sweetie? What is the starting place? And it always returns me to this development of the capacity of the heart to be mindful, to be intimate. And it might feel like, well, that's not enough, but that's okay, because we can be with that, right? We can be with that feeling. And it is actually from that place of awareness, of connection, of intimacy, that we learn how to share something, that we learn how to offer our lives up in the service of others. So I found myself going back to the Satipatthana Sutta. This is the discourse that the Buddha gave that really teaches us how to practice, where the 4 foundations of mindfulness are discussed, and where he gives us some instruction about how to be mindful and what to be mindful of. It's in the sutta that we learn that all of our life is expressed through, the senses, really, the body and the activity of the mind. We take everything in through the senses, make sense of it in the mind, then respond to that in some way in our activities of our lives. I kept coming back to this wanting some simple instructions on mindfulness, uh, because it seems like that is really the thing that makes the most sense, and actually helps me feel like I can practice some security that I know how to practice. I might not know what to do. I might not know what the right thing is to do, to even the complexity of attending the action that's still going on, I think, in Minneapolis right now. It feels really complicated. So you might have been, maybe, I know that some of you have been there, and others of you have probably chosen not to go for various reasons. But I was sifting through some comments of elders that I rely on for guidance, POC elders, and it was a mix of instructions. Come, support, especially white-bodied people. Come and support. Don't let us be on the front lines on our own. And then other instructions of real concern about coronavirus, and that the neighborhood, in South Minneapolis, where George was killed, is a historically Black neighborhood. And so there's given that African Americans are one of the highest risk populations, there's a concern that bringing the virus into the community, white people bringing the virus into the community. So just the complexity around decision making. But with the support of mindful, loving awareness, which is really the Buddha's instructions, it's not some dry awareness. It's actually a full, integrated, embodied, mindful awareness that's accompanied by love. We actually learn to have more resource than what the intellectual mind can provide. It feels really difficult to solve problems intellectually right now. Nod your head if you're with me. Yeah. But the body knows. The body, the mind, this heart, mind, body experience really has more wisdom. So when we can learn to cultivate this habit of mindful awareness that's connected to the heart, that's connected to the body, then we have greater capacity to do the right thing, to care about ourselves, to care about each other. We're just greater resourced. So, what did the Buddha mean by mindfulness? And going to the Satipatthana, there's some basic instructions here that I'd like to just review. And again, if you've been practicing for a long time, you've probably heard these instructions over and again. And maybe this is the first time and you can really take them in. But it's been really refreshing for me to practice, study these really simple instructions, and ask myself, how is this relevant right now? How does this matter now? In the complexity that I'm living in the complexity that we're all living in, what does it mean to be mindful in an embodied, heartfelt way right now? And what is the faculty of sati? Sati is the Pali word for mindfulness. And here's where the Buddha kind of lays out the formula and tells us, gives us the instructions. And he says, they, meaning us practitioners, remain focused, keeping track, or pointing to the continuity of mindfulness. So they remain focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, right? First foundation of mindfulness. Putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world, a tall order. They remain focused on feelings, this whether or not the experience is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, in and of themselves, the mind, in and of itself, mental qualities, in and of themselves, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. So this really points us to that, that statement I made that our whole life happens right here. All of what we offer actually begins and ends right here. And the Buddha is, interested in mindfulness because it is the root to helping us understand and free ourselves of suffering. Now, when you hear that, be mindful of the body, ardent, alert, and mindful. These are the ways to be mindful of the body, mindful of whether or not how experience feels. Does it feel pleasant? What is the residue? Is it unpleasant? Is it neither unpleasant or unpleasant? And all of the mind states that come and go. When you hear that instruction, doesn't it make it seem like, okay, I can do that? I can do that. So we don't have to lose hope over like everything has gone to hell. It may be that the world has gone to hell, but we actually have some say in what we contribute to our lives and to the world. If we can follow these instructions and keep applying the simple method in each moment as best we can. So just a little bit more on ardent, alert, and mindful. Alert comes from this Pali word, sampajana, and it's really pointing to how the instruction to be aware of what we're doing in the flow of the movement of the body and the flow of the movement of the mind. And really, because we're curious, we're interested in how our experience, how our relationship to experience of body and mind leads to or away from suffering. How does that seem relevant to you as we think about what happened, as we think about how a man was murdered at the hands of another? That might be strong language for some. But a life was taken, intentionally or unintentionally, really because there, is a lack of ability to be mindful and to be intimate with the experiences that are coming and going. And this isn't to blame another human, actually, because that's also a trap. It's kind of a simple and easy way out to say like, oh, it's somebody's fault. It's what the mind does when it doesn't know what to do. Right? When it wants to feel safe, it wants to take the heart wants to take the easiest route to happiness. That's why we gobble up sense pleasures, right? We gravitate towards anything that's pleasant and we just consume it, and we push away anything that's unpleasant because the mind wants the simplest route to happiness. So a simple route to happiness is to blame another person for something. Yet we can see the activity, the event, the death of a person at the hands of another, as a lapse in mindfulness, a expression of greed, hatred, and delusion that will always express themselves in an absence of mindfulness, in a moment of lapsed mindfulness. And we can see this, we know this. We can see this in our own lives, can't we? When we aren't committed to remembering to be aware, our life doesn't work that well. We don't show up as our best selves. I can see this in relationship with my partner, in relationship with good friends. You know, sometimes the strength of those defilements, the strength of greed and hatred, are stronger than the force of awareness. And they express themselves even, you know, in moments where I can see it coming. Like, oh no, this is about to get bad. Be careful, sweetie. Oh, there you go, saying that dumb thing again. Right? Oh, look at that. It really hurt. You knew that was going to happen. So we can have a lot of deep reverence for those seeds that are planted there and understand that it takes our diligent, persevering effort to actually meet the moment, to meet experience, right? To be able to respond in a kind and skillful way. And also really curious about this word ardent, alert, and mindfulness. And interestingly, when I looked up the word ardent in the dictionary, Webster defined ardent as a quality that has warmth of feeling. So it's like the strength of love or care that accompanies mindfulness. When we practice cultivating a moment-to-moment awareness that is persistent, persistently loving, persistent with a warmth of care, right? And steady or alert, the mind slowly learns that everything that we might take in and make sense of, all of all the flow of life, you know, is a process that we're a part of, that we're contributing to. So what does this all mean for us? Mindfulness, our efforts to cultivate this habit of mindfulness, the steadiness of mind, the steadiness of loving awareness that supports us in our lives. What does it mean now? James Baldwin said that history is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. So what we are experiencing now is perhaps the expression of hundreds of years of trauma. It doesn't matter if you're white-bodied or brown-bodied or black-bodied. There is some collective inheritance from the way that our country has been founded and the structures and the processes that have been in place for many years. And whether or not you've been at the protests, you could probably feel that. I could feel that from a distance, like, oh yeah, it doesn't actually feel that personal. It feels like collective history, collective wounds, the expression of collective wounds. I wanted to read a little bit from Resmaa Menakem's book, My Grandmother's Hands. Many of you have probably read it. Greta's got it right there. It's a great book. I would highly recommend it if you haven't, for anybody. It's a lot of wisdom here. Resmaa feels like a real steady companion to the Buddha's instructions. We just actually finished it. I've read it before, but we just finished it in our teacher training. So a couple of pieces that I'd like to read from Resmaa. Resma says, as every therapist will tell you, healing involves discomfort, but so does refusing to heal. And over time, refusing to heal is always more painful. In my therapy office, I tell clients there are two kinds of pain: clean pain and dirty pain. Clean pain is pain that mends and can build your capacity for growth. It's the pain you experience when you know exactly what you need to say or do, when you really, really don't want to say or do it, and when you do it anyway. It's also the pain you experience when you have no idea what to do, when you're scared or worried about what might happen, and when you step forward into the unknown anyway with honesty and vulnerability. Doesn't this sound like what we do as practitioners? Yeah. Experiencing clean pain enables us to engage our integrity and tap into our body's inherent resilience and coherence in a way that dirty pain does not. Paradoxically, only by walking into our pain or discomfort, experiencing it, moving through it, and metabolizing it, we can grow. It's how the human body works. Clean pain hurts like hell, but it enables our bodies to grow through our difficulties, develop nuanced skills, and mend our trauma. In this process, the body metabolizes clean pain. The body can then settle. More room for growth is created in its nervous system, and the self becomes freer and more capable because it now has access to energy that was previously protected, bound, and constricted. When this happens, people's lives often improve in other ways as well. I'm wondering, how many of you over the past couple of days have felt the need to just move, to get up, to walk around, to bounce, jump, maybe even go for a run, doing something, that intuitive wisdom that calls us to allow those energies to move, allow the body to discharge some of what it's carrying, some of the energy that it's carrying. Then I wanted to read this other passage. Healing from white body supremacy begins with the body, your body, but it does not end there. In order to heal the collective body that is America, we also need social activism that is body-centered. We cannot individualize our way out of white body supremacy, nor can we merely strategize our way out. We need collective action that heals. We need to join in that collective action with settled bodies and with psyches that are willing to metabolize clean pain. I can't stress this enough. Bringing a settled body to any situation encourages the bodies around you to settle as well. Bringing an unsettled body to the same situation encourages other bodies to become anxious, nervous, or angry. That discomfort in turn can sometimes activate people's lizard brains and create a fight, flee, freeze, or annihilate response. In America, all too often this results in an injured or murdered Black body. Just taking that in for a minute. How is our mindfulness practice relevant? Feeling what's in the body now. Breathing in awareness. Our ability to connect, to know the truth of our experience is always relevant. And it's relevant as we find our way through, as we navigate these waters of racial injustice, action, as we learn how to not personalize the experience, but actually see it as a collective, structural, historical, rooted problem. As we learn how to know what to do. I feel like I often don't know what to do. I was speaking with my cohort trainees about this just a few days ago, and everybody was like, "Yeah, no one does. No one knows what to do." But as I was saying before, what I've heard from Black leaders that I trust is two simple instructions: do something, and before you do something, do your work, so that you have a fighting chance of doing something that will be useful. So this is our work of applying the Buddha's instructions, being mindful, learning to cultivate the habit of mindfulness, being aware of those moments when mindfulness isn't strong and the force of greed or hatred or delusion expresses itself right here in this heart, so that we can be careful of what we're setting in motion. My friend Terry Karras um, has offered some workshops at Common Ground, especially for white people. And one of the little phrases that likes to use is like teaching us to notice racial moments. And I found that simple instruction to be so useful. Like how are the Buddha's instructions on mindfulness relevant right now? Well, like this is an example of how we apply the instructions to the conditions of now. So Terry's instructions about noticing racial moments is just that simple. So when we're moving about, we can actually notice when race is in the heart, when there's some awareness of race or racial dynamics, or that I'm a racial being, or that you're a racial being, or that race matters. It could be as simple as passing someone on the street or walking by someone in the store and just being curious about what's showing up there. Like, oh, okay, how is mindfulness? How are the Buddha's instructions about, directing us to be ardent and alert? What is that? How is that relevant right here in this simple moment as I pass this person on the street? Oh, okay. Feeling the body, feeling the sensations that feel like that right now. Okay, feeling the sensations of the body. Also notice there's some accompanying emotion of feeling that, allowing that to move. Noticing what's intuitive, like how does it move? How do we not, you know, reject the body or somehow forget that the body is useful in discharging energy? Okay. Noticing that the instinct is to keep walking. Okay, great. That's it. That's really so useful right there. We can learn, especially for white-bodied people, this is so important, learning how to not be disconnected from emotion, from feeling. I've been noticing this as I've been consuming different kinds of media, that, this conditioning to turn away, to not want the world to be the way that it is, to not want racism to not exist. And so catching, like being really committed to just staying in the heat, just staying there with whatever's moving in the heart. As I watch, as I consume, as I read, like, oh yeah, look at this. The heart wants to turn away, wants to pretend that it doesn't exist, that the world is different. Look at that. Okay, I'm just going to watch that. I'm going to watch this disconnection and reconnection. Because if mindfulness is there, even in a moment of apathy or disconnection, then we're still cultivating that habit. We're still in the game. I think I'll stop talking. Thank you for your kind and patient attention. Earlier today, I invited Common Grounds Dharma teachers to show up tonight in solidarity, not because we know, all of us or each of us know or even agree on the way forward at this complicated time, but because we're in solidarity of our capacity as students to be awake and to trust that if we can do that, we'll have a good chance of setting something beautiful in motion. We'll have a good chance of responding. And so I just want to acknowledge Common Ground's team of wise and beautiful teachers. So why don't you all wave to everybody? It's Patrice and Wynn and Mark and Alex Haley and Jean Haley and Mara Young and Io Yatunde and Stacy McClendon and Nils Heyman is here and Kyoka Katayama is here. Did I miss anyone? So I also would like to just open it up to any of the Dharma teachers if you have some offering to the community, if there's something you'd like to say about how you're practicing right now. Again, not because we know what we're doing, but because we're being good students and we're following our nose and we're seeing what works. Does anybody have something? Perhaps we'll start with Mark. Mark Nunberg, would you be willing to lead us off?
Yeah, this is, as you said, Shelley, a number of us took, white-bodied people took a workshop, some of Common Ground's leaders last fall, entitled, Can't You Stand the Heat, or Can You Stand the Heat? And anti-racism training. And then you brought this up, Shelley, and it's just been a very important way for me personally, doing this work. And like you described, noticing all the different ways, the conditioned ways of denial and turning away and having an idea and blaming and but basically more than a handful of common ways I notice in my heart to not just be there with the very unpleasant experience of being complicit with this kind of injustice and suffering. And it's, of course, my own suffering and the suffering of the wider community, and in particular, in these situations, Black-bodied people. And for me, as a white male, conditioned the way I am, that just learning how to inhabit that place of humility, of not going to a plan or even a specific action. I hear you about like being on the lookout for passivity or giving up, but for me, it's been really good about just being stripped bare. Like I went to the march yesterday, and for most of that time, it was like I had no clarity. Like, should I be there or not? Should we all be gathered this close together or not? Is this helping or not? And I don't know how much, I don't really know how that contributes, but I know it's, for me, just in terms of my own work, learning how to inhabit that really unpleasant, ambiguous space, and not wanting to take up those strategies where I'm avoiding the work at hand. And I really like that idea about like just how do I learn how to inhabit my racial space as a white person? How do I, like, in that embodied experience of being someone conditioned as a white male, how do I learn to live that, inhabit that with awareness and kindness, and then act from that place? So maybe I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Mark. Wondering if any of the other Dharma teachers would like to offer something. You can just raise your hand physically and I'll call on someone. Oh, Patrice. Yeah, thanks.
I think it's just to echo some of what's been said about the being with the tremendous sorrow, grief, confusion, and not making it about me and how I respond. I mean, that's such a sort of I think, Shelley, you were getting at this tonight about getting that self out of the way and letting awareness and compassion lead. I just find this sitting in the midst, and I love that you brought us back to being ardent and focused, because right now there's such a tendency to let the mind can proliferate. I don't have anything profound or wise to say at all. It's just feeling the tremendous grief, and I think the visuals that will stay with us for a long time. Not only the visual of the officer who was murdering George Floyd, but the visual that I cannot get out of my mind is the officer who turned away and wouldn't look. And I just feel that that is in some ways emblematic of what happens when power is acting out, that there's a turning away, and it may be a very complicated turning away, but that's the visual that seems to me to be so so much in my own consciousness right now, turning away and being aligned with power. And I think for the white-bodied people in the room tonight, that's the position that we are in so often. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrice. Any other teachers that would like to say a few words?
Shall I, may I?
Please, Io.
First, I want to express gratitude to you for your talk and also for inviting us to be together in solidarity, which is, if I may offer this, is evidence that you know something about what to do.
Mm.
Because things like this can be so shocking, demoralizing, so on and so forth, that we isolate even deeper than we already are. So thank you for knowing something about what to do. You said we don't know what to do, though, and that no one knows what to do. And people said no one knows what to do. It got me wondering: do we know what we want? And once we know what we want, we can then figure out what to do after that. And I think sometimes in our teachings, we teach against wanting things, wanting anything. You know, that may lead to clinging, and craving, and all kinds of things. There are the teachings about wholesome desire. And so maybe some of the things that we can do are understanding what is wholesome desire and whether wanting justice is considered wholesome. And if so, what are the wholesome ways to go about that? We know that not everyone is treated by the police the way George Floyd was treated. We know that. And then we could ask ourselves, well, why is that? Why do some people get treated like human beings and others like animals? What ensures that way of being seen as human? What ensures that? How does that happen? Is it by accident or is it by design? Is it because of advocacy? Whatever it is, can that be brought to bear for other people or people who are seen as other, but are people? So lots of questions. Just thank you for, and thank you for bringing us together, and thank you, Common Ground, for doing the work that could help us be together in solidarity like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Io. Yeah, Mara. Oh, you're muted, Mara.
Shelley and our community here, I just want to offer great gratitude for the wisdom and the capacity to show up, to be present, and to share so deeply from, the Buddha's teachings and how to apply them. And I was aware as I was sitting, and my heart, it's been hard to get underneath the outrage and the blame and the anger. And I was read a little about James Baldwin, a quote I love about getting underneath, to not be lost in the hatred, is essentially being in touch with the pain. And as we were just sitting together and feeling the power of our practice, my heart started to open in metta. I was sending metta to you to speak from your authentic, wise, courageous heart. I started to feel metta for our community and to be able to bear, to see that the collective trauma, hatred is just, activates us to that lizard brain and just that we're all together. So thank you. It's like I need to sit together at times like this. And I feel like my heart could be present with more equanimity to bear the pain of seeing other beings, other human beings lose their humanity. To be indifferent, to know that this is what we can do with this type of collective trauma and hatred. So to choose to really develop and care for the good heart, to really commit to be able to bear the suffering and not just get lost in the reaction, the rage, and to keep that, as Mark was saying, and others, and coming together, Io, Patrice, and yourself. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for supporting my practice.
Thank you, Mara. And we're just about out of time, so I just wanted to just take a minute, if we can just get still once more. And just appreciating all of the conditions that drew us here, and the wanting in the heart for justice, curiosity, perhaps, of some of the questions Io asked. How is it that some people are treated like animals and others not? And appreciating that this heart actually is called to know the truth, not turn away. And we've expressed that by being here. May the benefit of our practice be supportive to ourselves and each other. And may our lives be an expression of authenticity and justice as we make our way forward in solidarity. Thank you.